So then second on the list is The Second I Fall Asleep by the Boxer Rebellion.
Yeah,
Phil,
that's one of mine.
This was your pick, so yeah, I defer to you.
Yeah, The Second I'm Asleep. So it was. It's been. I reviewed this one for my blog, so I had to look into it a little bit because the Boxer Rebellion, they've been around for a long time, but they're a band that I probably got into fairly recently. Or the last couple of years at least, which has been the same probably for a lot of bands. When the blog project kind of started, I started to really delve into bands I'd probably missed for some reason in the past, and I think the Boxer Rebellion was one of them. So I'm not like a long-term fan. I don't know all the ins and outs of their past, but I do know it's been 8 years since the last studio album. So 2018's, there's a lot of water under the bridge since then. So I was kind of interested to see how this would fit in, how, what they'd have done, star-wise, sound-wise. So I don't think there's any surprises on this one. They haven't pivoted anywhere shocking. But I felt like they have kind of decided to, hold on to the core of kind of what they produce, which is kind of guitar forward, very emotive, emotionally resonant songwriting, warm production. I kind of hang on to that and, focus on the kind of positivity and hope kind of messages. Even though I think it does come across to me as a very positive record, but it still maintains kind of a realist kind of view of life. It's not kind of like happy clappy, everything's fine. It's one of those strange things that music does, I think, where it can, you can fill you with kind of positivity and hope, even while it's kind of reflecting on the realities of life, kind of thing. So getting very philosophical here. So that's my little overview. I think track-wise, "Flowers in the Water" is the opener. Quite pacey. It's kind of very unmistakably Boxer Rebellion to me. Kind of very open harmonic chords. Kind of nice firm drumming, organic bass sounds, very emotive vocals, bit of synth, that kind of thing. And it has that kind of sense of arrival, which I always find very satisfying at the beginning of an album, especially one like this, which is, after quite a long hiatus. Very intentional kind of feel to it as it starts off. And then a lovely, a nice segue, I think, into the second track, which is "The Last of a Dying Breed." Pretty much the same tempo, very similar kind of sound palette that they use there. So it's a really pleasing kind of progression from the first track 1 into track 2. Quite a generous kind of feel to that part of the album, kind of just taking us forward slowly, carefully upwards, increasing pace and pitch gradually, kind of guiding us on. And lyrically, that kind of really speaks to me as well. Nathan Nicholson's the vocalist, and kind of the line that he repeats, "You're the last of a dying breed, and someday we'll all be the last of a dying breed." It's very, very empathetic, very emotive, and could sound quite chilling and hollow in some ways. But it comes across very, as I said, it's realistic, but also there's a lot of empathy and kind of that sense of going together through life, realizing truths about life and kind of moving together. And then the next song, he talks about hidden meanings, which is kind of a nice sort of segue, I think, in terms of the emotions that it's tracing through. And then "This House" comes next. This is that track which has a kind of a nice snare beat driving things on, bit of weird jangling piano, kind of goes off a slight side path, I'd say, but still staying in the main direction that the album is heading, but kind of exploring some other ideas. And then Storm Chaser comes next, which is a bit more acoustic. Has one of the best lyrical lines, I think, from that I've heard this year, which is "Don't borrow worries from tomorrow," which I just found like maybe it's a little bit armchair philosophy, but it's one of those really nice lines that you kind of sticks in your head, when you're having a bit of a bad day. And I think that's kind of what this band often does, and this album does quite well. Is that kind of it's a lovely album just to have on and take you through your day, through life. And then so from there, what's that? That was Storm Chaser. Then it goes into Satellite Above, which is kind of very soaring, as the title would suggest. I think another thing this band does really well is kind of painting pictures with sound. The choice of instrumentation and melody kind of points you in the direction that they want you to go. Then we go into Don't Leave Yet, which is quite a hard-hitting track, I thought. It's a bit of sort of slower and thinner at the start, but gets really broad and empathetic. Kind of another one of those songs which kind of mixes somehow seemingly kind of almost despairing kind of words like "give me a sign," but also somehow makes that feel hopeful. So it's kind of that sense of expression and moving together through life. And then we've got probably the last 3 or 4 tracks kind of, to me, is like a unified kind of end point to the album. So it goes through Second Guess and then into Your Side of Town, which is the closer. And I think that I always enjoy that feeling of kind of like little chunks of albums. Kind of there's the whole picture, which is quite cohesive here, but there's kind of distinct episodes, I suppose, of the album. So that last episode, really kind of rounds off the album nicely. It's kind of points you towards a farewell, and also kind of forward-looking hopefulness again as you exit the album. So I'm being quite effusive about this one. You can tell it's one of my top ones of the year so far, I'd say. Which is why it's one of my picks. It's only 39 minutes long, but it's again one of those records which just feels quite vast. Whether it's through the instrumentation, the production as well, and also lyrically, there's a lot going on in those 39 minutes, which feel so it's quite a sort of precious, kind of important album, I'd say, in that sense, and very a nice package overall. So I think I've sold it, hopefully.
Right, Karl, are you sold on the second on the sleep?
Not as much, I would say. But yeah, I mean, Boxer Rebellion, fairly familiar with. I actually first discovered them back in the late noughties, where, if you guys remember, the iTunes single of the week, they had their song "Spitting Fire" was one of those, and I just really enjoyed that song at the time, and it put me onto their album Union, which I don't know where that sits in their discography, if it was their debut or not, but I quite enjoyed that at the time, albeit it's probably been 10 years since I've listened to that record now. but yeah, and then after that I sort of forgot about them for a good while, and then it wasn't up until was it Ocean to Ocean, which had that amazing like artwork, and I remember listening to that. And as you mentioned, Phil, their subsequent album Ghost Alive, which was the one that came out 8 years ago, I listened to both of those when they dropped, but again, I think they didn't leave. I remember enjoying them, but they didn't leave too much of an impression to the fact that I've gone and made me go back and listen to them some more in the years since. And then I think they had an EP out like a couple of years ago as well, which I vaguely remember as well. So yeah, definitely enjoyed like following their projects the last few years, and enjoy the opportunity to check in with these guys again and see, what they're doing in 2026. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Phil, at the start. Like the album is largely what I expected. There's no there's not any like sonic shifts or surprises. It's quite by the numbers indie rock record for the most part, I would say. But saying that, it's got some really nice like atmospheric guitar textures, as you mentioned, like all throughout the record. Nathan Nicholson's got just such a great vocal range, and he's got one of those voices that is just like naturally emotive and makes you feel something, as you said, Phil. I think that really does come through the headphones, and there's some good tracks on here. Last of the Dying Breed, you mentioned. It's like this great surging anthem right at the start of the record. Then Hidden Meanings, which I just really enjoyed everything about that song. Those plucky like acoustic textures, and then Nicholson's like falsetto vocals over the top of those, I thought was just really lovely. And then I think you nailed it, mentioning how on Satellite Above, how they really kind of put you into that song with the arrangement. It's got that big bass line running through it, and all this like really spacey instrumentation that fills your headphones. And again, Nicholson employs that falsetto voice again, so it's like really like top register vocal performance. And there's a couple of other nice moments. I think there's some nice guitar work on Perception. It maybe pulls it into like, I got a bit like later era Kings of Leon going into that territory on that song. And then right in the back end, Second Guess that's probably my favorite track in the back half. Just quite this, brooding track with all these like interesting flutters of instrumentation. And again, like those different guitar textures that come through as that track progresses, I thought was really nice. So it's one of those. There's definitely some nice moments on here, but I think my biggest issue with it as a whole is that for me, those moments, as you go, the more I kind of spun this record, those moments kind of were a bit few and far between. So I think for me, like as a front to back experience, I found it eventually like quite one dimensional and quite like middle of the road. I just got that sense that the band weren't like necessarily pushing themselves or maybe setting them apart as much. It's kind of one of those where it's like this is our lane, we're sticking to it kind of approach, and I think that can be said, not just for this project but others throughout their career as well. Having listened to their other stuff, this is very much like more of the same, I would say. So I think like their previous projects, this will be one for me where it's pleasant enough to listen to. It definitely has some nice moments, but maybe just doesn't give me enough like unique flair or reasons to come back to it as much. So for me, it ended up more of an okay record rather than a good or a great one, I would say.
Yeah, I'm probably more in your camp, Karl. I think it kind of a mixed bag. There was some very high highs. It was kind of one song which is up here, then some of them just brought it back into that kind of middle of the road sort of mark. But the ones I really want to highlight, the two best ones for me were Flowers in the Water, which was obviously one of the singles sort of promoting it. Really perky indie tune. I think throughout the lyrics are make for good reading, although I did miss the one you highlighted, Phil, on Storm Chaser, which the armchair philosophy, which I like. I like the description. I mean, that was one of the highlights for me as well, the Storm Chaser. But Flowers in the Water and then Karl, you mentioned Second Guess. That those were the two sort of very strong highlights to go into my sort of best of 2026 playlist for this year. And then the middle two of Storm Chaser and Satellite Above was another really good section for me. Satellite Above, I enjoyed the kind of Flea-like bass, the strident percussion, and the lyrics, you know, tackling Orwellian society and you know, a carousel of envy, I thought was quite a clever one. I assume that was intentional. And at my fingertips I forget to live, and really just sort of that kind of nature of life online versus life in 3D, and you know, the world we live in now, and maybe the not so pleasant aspects of that they really take on. So there's a lot in here, you know. You know, going back to Second Guess, yeah, I really enjoyed the heaviness of that one, and it just really takes you into a different place from a lot of them. I mean, otherwise it's all, you know, tracks I enjoy, but maybe just don't take it to the next level, which sets it apart from other sort of indie rock records. But yeah, no, pleased they're back. I mean, they brought out the EP a couple of years ago. That was one of my favourite EPs that year. And I, unlike the two of you, I don't have a recollection of any of their albums, or you know, from their previous era. But they were always one of those bands who were there, and I would sort of dip into the singles, and I always liked what I heard. So yeah, in their second inception, yeah, sort of having a deeper kind of impression of them, and yeah, hugely talented. I mean, Nathan Nicholson's vocals are excellent, and he really, you know, those falsetto vocals which you have on Hidden Meanings and a few of the other tracks as well, really go to another level. You know, it's yeah, hugely talented, and like I say, lyrically very enjoyable as well, where there's lots to unpack. So yeah, there'll be a lot of these tracks I will be returning to, but an album as a whole probably less so. And yeah, it was another good one to dive into, and a bit more of a broad opinion set on this one.